Welcome. If you're a woman who has a sense that there's more out there for you, you're in the right place. I'm Whitney Baker, host of the Electric Ideas podcast. Somewhere along the line of work and kids, life carried on, but I lost track of my truth. I'm on a reflective journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I interview a woman who is lighting her own path and offering others hope. Before our conversation ends, we'll share a reflective question for you to explore. Sometimes all we need is a jolt, a fresh idea, an aha moment that connects us to a sense of possibility. This, my friends, is what I call an electric idea. Welcome back to Electric Ideas. I'm your host, Whitney Baker. Something I've been reflecting on and doing a lot of writing and research around is how our identity shifts once we become moms. Oftentimes we grapple with how to balance meaningful work in the world with being the present moms I know we all want to be. Some of us stayed in the same line of work. Some of us downshifted our paid outside work. Some of us had a crisis of reality that we hated our jobs because sometimes having kids brings truths to the surface. Some of us took intentional pauses to focus on motherhood. There are many paths and many big emotional decisions to make when we have vision and a call for contribution outside of our role as moms. This is a topic that matters deeply to me, and I think it's a feminist topic of our generation of moms who were told we can do it all, but don't yet have the systems and cultural shifts to support us. Many of my clients are such bright women who are burning to contribute outside of the home, yet they're exhausted, they're overstretched, they're disconnected from their bodies and their joy. And this is why I'm so excited to share this meaningful conversation today with Rebecca Olson. Rebecca is a life coach and podcast host who specifically helps career-focused moms stop feeling overwhelmed so they can be present with their kids while also tending to their career ambitions. Through her coaching programs and her podcast, which, by the way, is great. It's called Ambitious and Balanced Working Moms. Rebecca has helped thousands of moms learn to feel confident in who they are, what they want, and the value they bring to their companies and the value they bring to their professions and their family. I know you're going to have so many great takeaways from this conversation, but before we dive in, I'm excited to share an opportunity with you guys to join the upcoming Busy Working Moms Blueprint Summit. I am a speaker at this summit, along with 27 other experts who understand the struggle and who are going to speak on everything from burnout and routine to health and wellness, meal planning, you name it. It's an event designed exclusively for busy working moms. My session is called Micro Practices for Protecting Your Energy and Focus as a Working Mom. And it deep dives into how 5-minute rituals can help you reconnect with yourself and your energy throughout the day so we can move past this feeling of always being scattered and traverse our day-to-day lives from a more rooted place. It's a great conversation. I really don't want you to miss it. So if you want to learn more about this summit and how you can join for free, you can find a link in the show notes to sign up. It's called the Busy Working Moms Blueprint Summit. And if you're connected with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman, I'll also include a link there in my bio. All right, hope you check out that link and can take advantage of all of the wisdom and resources coming to you in this summit that's happening in a few weeks. But in the meantime, enjoy this deeply felt conversation with Rebecca Olson. Let's get into it. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Whitney. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And I want to dive right into kind of a personal turning point in your life. I'm wondering if you can take us back in time to the time when you had your daughter and you thought beforehand that you'd jump right back in to work, but it was a bit confusing. You've described that the joy you had in your work felt a little bit lost. Can you just anchor us in kind of how that season of your life felt?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was on a fertility journey to have my daughter, and it took us about 1.5 years to get pregnant. And so by the time I was pregnant and then going through, obviously, then I went through an actual maternity leave and so forth, I started to think about coming back to work and feeling like not only was the work no longer aligned, but it felt so palpable to me. Like, I can't go and leave my daughter that I took so long to even conceive her, let alone here she is finally, to leave her and go off and do something in a job or a career that I don't really connect with anymore. That felt so wrong to me, let alone I was commuting into San Francisco. And so it was about an hour and 15 each way. I was like 2.5 hour commute. All these things, it just no longer aligned. And I mean, if I could have quit in the moment, I probably would have. It was like, no way, I can't do this. I'm not going to leave my daughter to go off and waste my time doing something that isn't meaningful to me, right? I felt like meaningful work and being impactful at work was so important to me. But yet, at the same time, I didn't know what that meant anymore, right? Like, I think for a lot of women, I mean, I know this. I didn't know this at the time, but having worked with so many women at this point as a coach, I get it. But I call it the motherhood identity crisis because it really does feel like that in the moment. This kind of, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? What do I want to do with my life? Who am I? Like, does any of this even matter anymore? It's like these big, very esoteric kind of questions that often hit women when they start having kids. And all of a sudden, like, time shrinks, right? You watch this tiny human. You literally have to change their clothes out of their drawers every 2 weeks, because they're growing so fast. And you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? Right. And so I was in that same moment, kind of crisis moment at that time, trying to navigate all of that at the same time.
That really spoke to me. So I know that it's going to speak to many. I went through something very similar because even if you think you like your job and you're ambitious and you enjoy working, you just don't know how you're going to feel after you have a child. So there's
Yeah.
no way to plan. But I think that if you happen to be in a career that has lost its meaning for you,
Yeah.
for me, there just is like a mirror that exacerbates everything after I have kids. And I didn't have language at the time.
Yeah.
It's a very tricky thing to navigate because you're in such high demand caring for a newborn and
Yeah.
then having your own, like you said, esoteric career crisis at the same time. It's
Yeah.
a lot. I pulled a quote that I really like that you said that I feel like speaks to how I felt during this time too when I was trying to figure out how to straddle both worlds. You said, I feel like I was caught between two worlds, both of which were important, but neither one was thriving. I
Mhm.
never had enough time to spend with the kids and never had enough energy to put toward work.
Yeah.
So, how do you start inviting your clients into challenging the belief that it has to be either or?
Yeah. Yeah, because really that story is a story of failure on some level, right? It's like you get to the end of the day and you just never felt like you gave enough to anything. And
Mm.
so you're like failing. You're like failing as a human being almost, right? You're failing in all of the roles that you're playing. And that failure story has to be flipped on some level. Like, I like to tell my clients, our brain operates like a flashlight. Like, it's pinpoints certain perspectives that oftentimes are very skewed one direction. In almost all of our brains, as human beings, we know that all of our brains are skewed to the negative. Like, we're skewed to see our failures more than we are successes, right? Our brain is skewed to see how we missed the mark instead of what we actually nailed, right? Our brain is cued in to see what we didn't get done instead of what we did get done. And so we sort of default into this failure story automatically as just human beings. And then I think, lots of societal pressure as women, and we can start to layer in all sorts of things that start to happen that make that story even more heightened. And so recognizing that it's a story, meaning it's just a flashlight perspective, it's not the whole picture, is a huge starting point for anyone that is wanting to kind of reset the way that they're thinking. Because ultimately, we have a lot of control over the way that we think. We don't realize that, but we sometimes, and this is one of the things I like to tell my clients a lot, you can't always help your first thought or your first perspective, but you can always choose your second, right? You always have the option of pivoting out of one perspective that you have and into another, and really learning how to do that more on demand. Like, that skill set serves all of us when it comes to kind of living the big, passionate life that we all want to live.
Yeah, I want to get into that more and understand that more. Let's go back to the straddling of the worlds, though. And again, just because I think it's useful to hear someone else's story, like I love what you said about we default into the failure story because that's exactly how it has felt for many of my
Yeah.
clients. And I'll put myself in there just because it's easier to see something. Like I went back 5 days, then I went 4 days, and then I negotiated 3 days after my
Yes.
second daughter, thinking that was this holy grail. Like I'd found this balance.
Right.
And it was worse. I was
Yeah.
not having boundaries at home. I was not having boundaries at
Right.
work. And it was just a
Failure
big,
story
yeah,
actually increases with that.
yes, that my
Yeah.
failure story spiked. And I definitely was just hit that burnout point where like, I can't do this. And
Yeah.
so when women come to you stuck in that failure story, how do you
Mm.
start to unwind from it?
So recognizing that it's a failure story to begin with is a big piece of it. Recognizing that it's a story, you get to choose your perspective of the story ultimately. And I'm even thinking about a client I've worked with recently who came to me and said, 100% my only solution here is to quit. And I was like, well, look, maybe that's what you need to do. But how about we just start working together, learning the skill set that's required to balance life in a better way. And then we'll see where you're at once you kind of learn that skill set, right? So learning that it's a story that we always live in and that we get to choose our story, just understanding that is a big part of the equation here. So if you believe that work and home are at odds with one another and you have to choose, then that's likely going to be the result that you take. It's going to be the path that you take because it's what you believe, right? If you believe that work and family can coexist and that they actually, not even that they can exist side by side, but that they can like inform one another, that they can support one another, that they are congruent with each other, then you can begin to problem solve for that. You can begin to go down the path of learning the skill set to do that, of learning how to actually go about making that happen. But it comes back really to the actual story that you believe about these two things and how they intertwine together, right? Do you believe that you can remain in your job and experience the motherhood experience that you want? If the answer is no, then your only options are to quit or to change that story, right? Or to live miserably.
Yeah.
Or if you believe that you can in fact do it, then all of a sudden we move into a different part of our brain where we could strategically start thinking about, well, how, if it's possible to make these things work, what needs to happen, right? Like becomes the natural next question we start to ask, which then gets us into like the actual problem solving of it.
Ah, that is so profound. And it seems simple, but it's not because I think that so many women, when they return to the workplace, are in this striving, I got to prove myself mode and taking on more than they probably even need to just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
of pressure and perceived need to prove that they can still do it all
yeah,
when they
yeah.
actually have had their entire worlds rocked.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't say that's very common. That's a very common story. It's like embedded in our culture that
Yeah.
we as women are not going to be as devoted or as good at our job once we start having kids, right? We see that statistically speaking as well, right? Moms make less money than working dads. And it's not even like the male female split in terms of salary goes massively wider once we start having kids. So I think it's like 8 or 9 cents. I want to say it's like women make 90, I think it's like 91 cents to every male dollar. But then when we become moms, it's like 82 or like 78, it's somewhere like the 78, 82 cents per dollar, while the male actually starts getting raises
Mm.
at that time. I mean, it's wild how embedded in our culture this is. And yeah, we as women even take that on. I remember when I returned back from maternity leave, it was like a performance cycle. So I like returned from maternity leave and then we immediately went into like performance reviews for the year and something like that. And it was the only year I never got a raise. And I never asked why I didn't get a raise. I just was like, oh yeah, well, I took maternity leave and was out for 3.5 months during the year. That makes sense while I didn't get a raise. That's what I said to myself. Like my boss never said that to me. Wait a second. I worked 9 months during the year still. That was like really good work and exception. I was still an exceptional employee while I was there. Of course, I deserved a raise and should have advocated for it. But I didn't even realize I was living in the same story, right? I was just believing the same thing that we all believe that, I was out for 3 months and probably is right. I probably don't deserve that. It's wild to me that as I look back and I think about it now from the work and the perspective I do now, thinking about the old me and going, what was she thinking? That's ridiculous, right? I should have advocated.
Right. Well, sometimes it takes that space and like looking back, like hindsight's 2020, and now you can help other women because yeah,
Absolutely.
there are so many the research, like you said, bears out it's not just cultural narratives, but it's, policies that are stacked against us as women. I think we have a long ways to go to internalize those. But I feel like what you were saying really strikes me because if we go in and we're like, well, this is never going to work for me. Oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed and stretched. If we flip, like you said, if we flip the story to how can this work for me and let the company decide that it's not working for them, that feels
Yeah.
much more empowered.
Doesn't
And
it though?
yes, yes. Because sometimes I think we
Absolutely.
decide for ourselves, like, oh, no, if I can't be the person that stays till 9 anymore for a new business pitch, then I'm out. Like, this isn't going to work.
Right.
So,
Right.
how do we start to tiptoe into having that feeling of empowerment and agency where maybe we don't change jobs right away, but we design the way we feel good about showing up for our job?
Yeah. I think the first step always is clarity. It's a first step in almost any process I think that there is. You have to have a really clear vision of what it is that you want. What does it actually look like for you to be successful in your job and show up as the mom that you want to be? If you don't have a vision for that, then it's going to be really hard to create that in your life, right? Because your brain has no idea what it should be prioritizing at any given time, right? And so you kind of live in a perpetual, I should be doing more all the time and never living up to any expectation, but you've never actually set an expectation for yourself. You've never actually set a vision, right? So the step of clarity cannot be overlooked. You can't move on without first having a vision of some kind of what it looks like to be a successful working mom. And, I like to say that our goals as working moms are twofold, right? It's not just about a career anymore. It's about feeling successful as a mom at the same time. But it's not, I don't even like to think about them as like, either or sometimes your career moves forward and then sometimes you spend more time with your family. I know that's how some people like to frame kind of a balance of things, right? On some level, but I like to think that our goals, once we become moms, become very intertwined. And so it's about being successful as a working mom, which means that both areas of life have to feel like they are successful and that you are being successful in them. Otherwise, they both feel like they're failing because they're that intertwined with each other. So then this clarity piece of like, what does it mean? What does success as a working mom actually mean to you? What's the vision of that? I think another clarity piece of it is, what does balance actually mean to you? It's a completely subjective word. What it means to you isn't necessarily what it means to me. So actually putting words to understanding what balance means so that you can use that word and your brain actually has a very clear definition of what that means is also another piece of the clarity journey. And then I would also say another one that oftentimes gets overlooked is feeling really clear about who you are and anchoring yourself into the who. I always believe that our decisions should flow out of our who, which means that what you value, the impact that you want to make, why you're here, like the best version of you should be the one making decisions, which means that you need to kind of know what the best version of you is. You have to put some words to that on some level and feel really good about you, confident in who you are, so that confident decisions can flow out of that, right? That's how confident decision making works, right? We like to think that when we make a right decision, then we can feel confident about it. When in reality, confident decision making flows out of a confident person. That's how it works. So when we feel confident, we make confident decisions. And so that clarity piece is the step for everyone. And so, I mean, as your listeners are hearing that, I'm hoping that they're identifying which clarity story, which clarity piece is their first step, right? Do they need to define balance for themselves? Do they need to spend some time vision casting success as a working mom? Do they need to anchor themselves into who they are, right? That's going to be their starting point.
I really appreciate how you're describing this too, because just from a zoomed out level, it seems like much more the way of the feminine and the way that women move, that everything's interrelated. I don't want to speak universally, but it seems in my communities, women don't want to compartmentalize because everything's
Yeah.
everything
Yeah, of course.
anyways. So I really appreciate what you're saying there. How has your definition of success changed as a working mom?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think that I'm unwilling to sacrifice some of the values and some of the key, I think values is the right word, key teachings, key values that I want to instill in my kids and in our family for the sake of the work that I do. And so what that means to me is that I'm going to take a lot more space to listen to my kids, to carve out time. I mean, my kids are now 8 and 11, so they could talk to me a lot more than they used to carve out time to have intentional conversations. My daughter just yesterday before bed, she said, she's not talking to me much these days. I'm just going to be really honest. She's like pulling away, right? And so when she said, "Mom, can we talk for a minute?" And she like cozied up into her bed and she like pulled her pillows. I'm like, "Yes, let's sit down and talk for a minute. I don't care what I was about to do. This is the most important thing right now." And we sat down and had a conversation about why she can't have a phone, if we're really clear on what the conversation was. So it wasn't all that deep, but these moments are everything, right? Where she feels seen, she feels heard, she feels like she can speak to me. I am cultivating an adult here. And so I'm not willing to sacrifice some of those things for the greater impact that I could have in my work. But I also don't believe that my family limits my work in any way as well. So I contain work I'm really good at my boundaries. I contain work within a period of time that I set. And I believe that I can be just as successful as I want to be on all sorts of levels within that period of time, that I don't need more time in order to do that. And so because I believe that, I strategically make decisions based upon that and living into that value ultimately.
I think that that is a really strong skill to be able to contain your work. And especially with the prevalence of women working from home, I think that it's easy for boundaries to get blurred. I think that there's frustration at how available you are sometimes, like throwing a load of laundry or,
Yeah.
what's your best advice for drawing boundaries around your work so that you don't slip into that mode where you feel frustrated, like, oh my gosh, I have this energy and talent that I want to share with the world, and I want to show up for my family, and I'm not getting to the contribution piece outside of family.
This is reminding me of a conversation I had a client with yesterday. And we were talking about her work time and how easy it is for her to she goes to a workout class and her workout class is 20 minutes away and then Costco's right there. So it's really easy to do the Costco run right next to that, which is right next to the next store, which she might jump into that. And so by the time she gets home and she actually starts work, she's like hours into her workday at this point, and it never feels like she has enough time. It's like, okay, well, let's backtrack for a moment and let's talk about when you want to actually work. Like you actually have to start with a very clear definition of that commitment. And what she said was, I want to work anywhere from she's kind of in a unique situation right now. So I'll just say that. But she's like, I want to work anywhere from 1 to 4 hours a day. I'm like, okay, well, 1 to 4 hours is not clear and it's neither a commitment. How many hours do you actually want to work? And when do you want them to be? We have to start there and then figure out what is going to get in the way of you actually holding to that commitment, right? We tend to think about work hours or even not off work hours as a nice to have on some level. Like if I can get to that, I will. And we'll think about that in terms of particularly when it comes to our me times, our workouts, our, things that we're doing for us personally. It's like, oh yeah, I'll do that later if there's time. You're never going to do it, right? That's not a commitment. It's not a very clear, committed action that you've decided for yourself. There's actually not even a decision. There's just like a hope that maybe later, if I feel like it after work and after my kids are asleep, I might then do my workout then, right? Like that's how we actually think like that. But when I say it out loud, you're like, oh my gosh, of course she's never going to do the workout.
Yeah, no mom ever.
You're never
No
going to
mom
do the
ever.
workout if that's the commitment, right? So you actually have to decide.
Yeah.
And be very clear in your mind what that decision is. And so it has to start there. And that's what I said with my client yesterday as we were talking about it. So she made it very clear. It's 3 hours. And I said, great. When is it? And she hemmed and hawed. She's like, okay, it's from 10 to 1. I'm like, great. Okay. So when is that workout class you go to? It's like, well, it's at 8 o'clock. Okay. So does that mean you get to go to Costco afterwards? And she's like, no, because then I wouldn't be able to get back home and do that by 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay. So do you hear how you're making a decision right now that your Costco run doesn't happen after your workout? Because then you wouldn't get to start working at 10 o'clock, because this is how we have to start problem solving it. She was like, well, then when am I going to do my chores and things? And I'm like, great. Well, when are you going to work then? If working is the priority and you want a set period of time to do that and you don't want to work outside of that time, then you have to protect that time. You have to decide that this time is when it's going to happen and you're unwilling to work at other times. and then you have to learn how to actually protect it. But again, starting with the clear commitment is going to be the first step. And then it's going to be figuring out what's going to actually get in the way of you holding that. And in her case, it was Costco is convenient right next door. And now she's got to do Costco on Saturday because that's when she's got to do it if she's got to actually hold to this commitment.
Right. I mean, having that clarity, though, can also cut down on decisions and fatigue and like the time, it really saves us time.
Can I give one more example? It's a bit different, but maybe people that work from home, I think, could understand this too. Like, I work from home myself. And so when I started working from home, the thing that would get in the way of my work time and feeling like I could get my work done was the dishes. There was always an immense amount of dishes from breakfast to lunch that was just my own, right? To who knows? I don't know. And so I realized that when I started doing the dishes, then inevitably I would start wiping down the counters. And if I started wiping down the counters, then that required me to go through the mail that was also sitting there so I could wipe the counter under the mail. And so it just led to one thing to another. And so I had to decide I was never going to wash the dishes during the day. And I had a very direct conversation with my husband where I explained this whole situation that was happening and how all of a sudden, an hour plus later, I was, not working. And I said, look, what that means is that you're going to come home and the kitchen is going to have an immense amount of dishes because I didn't do the breakfast dishes. If they weren't done before you left, they didn't get done. And I have my lunch stuff, and then you're bringing home your lunch stuff and the kids' lunch stuff. And so now there's just going to be a lot of dishes. And you know what? There are a lot of dishes that sit in the kitchen. And he comes home and he's like, wow, we both sometimes stare at it. We're like, wow, there's a lot of dishes here. I don't ever do a dish when I'm home because I know that it derails my impact at my work. And so I had to make a very clear decision. That was something I was never going to do. Maybe you have to decide you're never going to do laundry during the day. Or maybe you're going to decide I'll start one load, but I'm not going to keep going beyond that, right? Sometimes these types of things when we're home that get in the way as we walk, I have to walk through my house and I know what's in my living room right now. It doesn't look very good. And I have to decide that's not the most important thing. And it's going to have to get done at a different time because my work impact, like this is my work time. And if I'm choosing not to work late tonight, then I have to get my work done during the day and the mess has to stay.
Yes, I feel like that is very empowering for women who do work from home because I think we have to unwind from that feeling of shame, that some of us carry too of like, okay, just because I work from home, like I'm working from home, it's a whole thing. But I just really celebrate you for holding that boundary. And it probably makes your family who can now help you appreciate that. Okay, we can all jump in on these dishes,
Oh, I wish that was the case. But we're getting there. We're getting there on some level.
Yeah.
But it comes from feeling really clear around what this definition of success is for me, what it takes for me to achieve that level of success, and ultimately having to make the trade-off decisions about what I'm not going to do in order to live into that version of success that I know that I need.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. So for my moms in the community who have more traditional hours and they're like, okay, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. to work out. I'm getting my kids off. I'm coming home. I'm doing my family thing. And then I'm probably catching up more at night and it just feels not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know you talk about redefining our relationship with work, even when we're not changing our job or changing the hours.
Yeah.
So can you speak into that a little, please?
Yeah. And we said this before, but it's the story that's coming up as I think about it. But that version of the story where you say, I think my only option here is to quit. I can't tell you how often I hear that from women. I think my only option here is to quit or to pull back, right? For me, as the kind of work that I do as a coach, that's not what I'm about. I'm about seeing more women deciding to stay in their role if they want to, moving up in leadership, closing some of that leadership pipeline at the top. And that requires us is to not think that the only option is in order to make it all work is to quit. We have to change that story. Now, that doesn't mean you're necessarily in the job that you need to be in or that you want to be in, right? But if you can learn how to contain your work and do your part to eke out as much productivity during your day so that you contain your work within your work time, however you decide that, and feel like you can be present and at home and not have to log back on and not have to like overwork. We're essentially like shifting a lot of the overworking behaviors. When you're able to do that, again, to your point, it feels really empowering to say like, oh, like I can get so much more done during my day. I actually feel more on top of my work and feel more successful. And that then allows us to then pull back and say, okay, well, now that you've actually learned like the skill set of being more productive with your time and managing your work, do you still want to stay in this job or not? Right? It becomes a very empowering conversation then to have, because now it's not coming from a place of I can't and I'm failing and this is my only option. It's coming from a place of desire. It's coming from a place of like goal setting and things like that. Right. And so when you're in that type of traditional job, it still requires usually a starting point of making a decision of when you're working and when you're not. Usually I like to say it's not about your work time because we're really good at keeping working going. It's about your off work time and defining when you're going to be off and completely unavailable to work, to thinking about work, to answering messages and all of the things. A lot of times what happens, this is when we get into procrastination types of behaviors, people pleasing behaviors and things like that, is during the day. If we haven't actually set off time, what happens is during the day when we're getting derailed or when we take that last minute meeting that was supposed to be 15 minutes, but it actually turned out to be an hour and it took away all of your time and all of the things, or when we choose these things during the day, if you haven't decided you're going to be off tonight, your brain just thinks, I'll just log back on later and finish that, right? The solution becomes working more hours in order to get your work done. And while I'm not necessarily opposed to working at night, I have plenty of clients that choose to do that, but that's the point. They've chosen their work time and they know when they're going to work and they know when they're going to be off work, and they're not doing it reactively, they're doing it proactively. And so deciding when you're going to be off and then having to problem solve for like, okay, well, if I'm not going to log back on later in order to get that stuff done, how am I going to get it all done during my day? Right? We get to actually problem solve for this. And we actually all know how to do this. It's like when you have a vacation coming up and so you're going to leave for like a week or longer or whatever. And so it's like Friday and you have to get everything done before you leave because you don't want to work during your vacation. You're not going to be available. And so what do we all do? We don't say yes to those last minute requests. We turn on do not disturb. We like put our heads down. We like push through when we feel confused or when we don't know something. It's like, I don't have time for this, so I'm just going to have to make a decision to move on. Like we don't overthink things. We just keep moving through it because we're not giving ourselves the option of logging back on later and doing it. We're not going to do it during our vacation, right? So we actually know how to kind of create that almost like arbitrary deadline on some level within us and how to live within a contained period of time with work. We just have to practice it when we don't have something like a vacation or something, a deadline that actually is making us do that.
Yes, I just want to reflect that back because something you said that really makes sense is, just defining our I'm not working time and treating it as equally as I am. I mean, it might make it clear to us what we can't say yes to during the day or last minute. Because if we're
Yeah.
saying that we want to show up for our family and our work,
Yeah.
then we have to hold both those times. That
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. Well, time is flying. I guess I just was wondering, I know we've talked a lot about intention, clarity, boundaries. I always like to leave my communities with kind of something practical that they could
Yeah.
try on for size. So if I was a working mom and, year end is always a time for extra reflection for kind of me and my community. If I wanted
Yeah.
to just try something different to see if I could feel different within my working mom days without
Mm-hmm.
dramatically changing the circumstances, if you
Yep.
will,
Yep.
what's something that we could try?
So I think one of the most impactful things that we could ever do within our day is cultivate the kinds of mindsets and thoughts and perspectives that we want to have throughout the day, right? To not just let our brain kind of run amok through the day unhinged, right? But actually to kind of rein it in and bring some focus to it. And I think the best time to do that is to kind of set that kind of mindset for the day is the morning. Most of my clients can do a practice like the one I'm going to tell you about in the morning. Sometimes they got to do it at night. It's fine as long as you get it in during your day. But I like to start it during the morning because it begins our day with the kind of thoughts and tone that you want to have throughout the day. And when you start your day with the mindset that you want to have, it actually becomes more accessible to you throughout the day. Because I'm not going to say you're magically going to maintain it throughout the day. You're going to forget for sure. But there's going to be this kind of part of your brain that kind of remembers, oh, just a few hours ago, though, I thought that thought about my life or myself or whatever. And I'll explain it in a moment. And it becomes accessible again to you because it's not buried deep within all of the other thoughts that you've had throughout the day, right? We think like 60,000 thoughts a day, a lot of thoughts throughout the day. So this is the one time that you're going to think on purpose what you want to believe and what you want to think throughout the day. And so starting it in the morning, so I call this the daily kickstart, kind of kickstarting your morning. And it starts with setting kind of an intentional belief that you want to hold throughout the day. I like to pick beliefs, and I encourage my clients to do the same, that begin with I am. I am enough. I am good enough. I'm doing enough. I know what I'm doing. I deserve to be in this job. I'm the right person for this company. I am highly valuable. I'm doing everything right. I'm a very successful working mom. You choose whatever the belief is that probably is you're not really believing right now, that if you believed it, it would make all the difference kind of in your mind and your energy. Like that's the belief we want to cultivate, and we want to start with it right in the beginning. I'm going to be honest, it's like brainwashing. We are in fact brainwashing, but we've brainwashed ourselves on the negative already. Now we just want to brainwash ourselves to the positive. And so picking a belief and then actually working to writing that belief down, writing, why do I want to believe this belief is usually the next question I have my clients think about. And actually, I have this all in its own download that will be in the show notes. I will give you the link to that. So you don't have to take copious notes, but I literally will walk you through exactly what this practice looks like. And then the other questions start to support, when am I going to not believe this today? What's the circumstance today where I'm going to forget that I'm enough or I'm doing enough or I'm good enough, right? And so it kind of learning how to think on purpose and then sort of get ahead the kind of swirly moments that happen throughout the day where we break belief or we forget to what we're believing about ourselves, right? And kind of getting ahead and making a plan for that and supporting that. That practice, it's 10 minutes. It will change your entire energy as you start your day. My clients say it time and time again, learning to anchor a practice like that in the morning changes the rest of their day. And they notice the days that they don't do it because they start in a swirl and they start feeling unanchored and kind of unmoored, and they start feeling, not enough throughout, because that's just where we default, right? They notice how that feels throughout the day. And so learning how to do this on purpose is 10 minutes, it's everything. If you change no other circumstance, I promise it's going to change everything.
That's such a beautiful practice. Thank you, Rebecca. I couldn't agree with you more. And also, I feel like coming back, having that written down, if you get to that point where you're kind of in a negative swirl or you feel like, okay, gone somewhere that I don't want to go, rereading that, it would invite me to just look for the possibility, you just re-anchor to it. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. I think that's going to be really helpful. I always enjoy leaving my episodes with an opportunity for reflection. So in the areas of working moms taking their power back and sustainably showing up for both work and family, what's one question women could be asking themselves more?
I'm going to stick with this enoughness theme. I just think it's everything for us as women. So I'm going to say the question is, how do I know I'm already good enough? How do I know I'm already good enough? Because you already are. We like to think that sometimes our success, our enoughness, the way we want to feel, it's out there somewhere, and we got to go chase it. We got to go find it, or when the circumstances align, versus believing we're already there now. And of course, we might want to increase it, but we can actually still relish in our success, in our power, in our joy, in our enoughness, in our sufficiency today. And obviously can still increase it into the future. And so practicing the belief that we've already arrived at our enoughness, we've already arrived at feeling successful, that is going to change your energy and direction.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I know that my community is going to want to follow you and continue to learn. And I really appreciate the work you're putting out in the world. So where can we look for you?
Yeah. So my website is really easy to find, RebeccaOlsonCoaching.com. You can learn all about the kinds of things that I do, the coaching. And obviously, please do download the daily Kickstart, which I'm pretty sure there'll be a link to that in the show notes. And then in terms of social media, I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. So both of those are just my name, Rebecca Olson Coaching. And pretty easy to find me in both those places. Oh, and my podcast.
Yes.
Ambitious and Balanced Working Moms. You're already a podcast listener. You might like that one as well. So please do follow me there.
Wonderful. Thanks for the meaningful conversation, Rebecca.
Thank you, Whitney.
I'm so glad you joined me today. If you're looking for more, feel free to connect with me on Instagram at @WhitneyWoman. And if you enjoyed the show, I invite you to support me by leaving a review or sharing it with a friend. Hope you have an inspired day.